Hi there, my name is Grace Kuntz, and I will be talking about the importance of diversity in movies today. This is a super important topic to understand, not only in movies, but in media and life in general. As an architecture major, diversity is something we talk about daily, as for a long time it was a white male dominated field, but that is changing exponentially. So what exactly is diversity? Diversity is a term for incorporating people of many social and ethnic backgrounds, income levels, and more. Diversity relies heavily on incorporating people from many different walks of life. Being able to better understand people who are different from us is key to not only making us better marketers, but better humans as well. When talking about diversity, many people's first thought is about race. While yes, race plays a huge role in conversations of diversity, diversity is so much more diverse than that. It covers differences in race, age, gender, religion, income, social class, and much more. Well, I'm sure your next question is probably what are demographics? Like I touched on in the last slide, we all fall into different demographic categories based on our race, gender, age, and more. Demographics are very useful for marketers as it can inform producers who is buying their products or who is likely to buy products. This could be compared to stereotypes, such as college aged white girls who are likely to buy pumpkin spice lattes to carry around while they walk around in their Ugg boots in the fall. However, it is best to be careful to place people into specific categories like that. Stereotypes can sometimes be hurtful or even harmful, so demographics are more of a guide rather than a rule. Demographics give a hint about how people in a certain group may act. That doesn't mean everyone in that group will respond in the same way. This conversation leads us to the demographics of the US. Before we can begin to understand the demographics in movies, I thought it was important to highlight overall demographics of the US to give a better understanding of the numbers I talk about later on. As you can see on the graph, the US is mostly white at about 60% of the population, identifying as white only. The next largest group was Hispanic or Latinos at 18%, then Black or African American at 13%, Asian at 5%, two or more races, meaning mixed race, at about 3%, and finally, Native Americans at about 1%. Now, 1% doesn't sound like a big deal, but with a total US population of 332 million, 1% of that is still over 3 million people. So while it may seem that diversity shouldn't be that big of a deal, there are large groups of people who wish to see more people like them on the big screen. And gender is split pretty evenly at about 50% both ways. So how does this affect diversity in movies? Diversity in movies has come a long way. There was a time when black people were not even allowed in the same theaters as white people, let alone on the screen at the same time. Oftentimes, if minorities were allowed on screen, it was only to the effect of racist caricatures that were harmful to how minorities were viewed. We've come a long way. There are incredibly stacked casts featuring strong black leads and strong female leads, or predominantly Asian casts, but yet we're still seeing firsts. For example, Sandra Oh was the first Asian woman to win the Best Actress TV Drama Golden Globe in almost 40 years for her role in Killing Eve, awarded in 2019. Like I've previously mentioned, there are some key aspects in how I specifically want to talk about diversity in movies. People like to see others like them in similar situations and succeeding and making progress. It's inspiring. I also want to talk about how story content and how it can relate to stereotypes. And finally, I wish to talk about direction in movies and how having a diverse cast is important, but having a diverse production crew can prove just as important. So, like I said, representation in movies is very important. Many people online have been buzzing recently about the recent release of Encanto, which features a Hispanic influenced family. Not only does the movie host a different race than we are typically used to seeing, and I use this term loosely because white stories are not the default, it's just not until recently that many children's movies did not feature complexity and diversity in race like this one has. Many of the characters are diverse in their appearance, their skin tone, their body size, and more. Another example of a great feat in movie diversity would be Black Panther. This movie not only features a predominantly black cast, which is still relatively new and opened the doors for other large budget films, with predominantly black casts to become more mainstream. And lastly, The Help. This movie not only has a marvelously stacked cast, there is an equal representation and screen time of both black and white women. This movie is like a 2-for-1 deal, as it also is a predominantly female cast, which has opened the door for so many more to be made. As you can see, there are obviously lots of examples of diverse movies out there, and the topics they cover go so much more deep than simply race or gender. So now that we've covered that progress has been made in the movie industry, it's important that we tackle how this opens and closes doors. Predominantly black casts are being utilized to tell important stories. However, some people wish that there would be more complexity and diversity in movie types. No one is saying it's not important to have conversations about race or concerning the atrocities black people faced during slavery and the civil rights movements. However, black people are capable of depicting so much more than just hardship. Many black Americans have stated that they wish to see more movies that feature black actors simply having fun or depicting lighthearted storylines. Yes, those other genres are important, but it's just as important to see people who look like you having fun, being successful, and being able to see those things without the added heaviness that comes with viewing stories about slavery and other hardships. I just want to reiterate, stories about slavery are important. However, those are not the only stories that black people are qualified to tell. And finally, to our last point, diversity in movies still requires some action. We are seeing an exponential rise in how many different groups are featured in our movies today. However, it is important that we recognize putting people of color in control of casting and directing these stories is just as important. Having people of color employed on set is a huge deal. Many times, makeup artists and stylists hired for movie sets don't know how to properly work with textured hair or darker skin shades. This creates a huge gap in white actresses being able to have anyone work on them, and black actresses either having only one qualified person or even none and being responsible for their own hair and makeup. This may not seem like a big deal, but their job on set is to deliver lines and portray emotion, not be hair and makeup team. And if it were, then they should ultimately be compensated for both. An actress, Yvette Nicole Brown, mentioned having to bring her own trunks of hair and makeup supplies to set because stylists weren't prepared for black actors. This is obviously unfair and still needs work. So the bottom line, diversity plays a huge role in movies. It is imperative that the movie industry not only continue to incorporate minority actors, but also incorporate minority leaders in film, such as directors, hair and makeup artists, and more. People want to see diversity, and since it's something on a lot of people's minds right now, it sells tickets. And finally, we have come a long way, and that progress is something to be proud of, but there is always more work to be done. Thank you so much for viewing my presentation. I hope it was informative and gives you a good basis to answer my question and pack back. I look forward to seeing your responses.